Hey everyone, it's Emily, and I'm going to be posting a very late July wrap-up. So if you haven't seen the previous video I posted, I just talk about the tech changes that have happened that made now filming much easier, but I needed to kind of make sure that everything worked and kind of get settled into a new filming routine and setup and make sure all that new tech was working. Anyway, so I'm refilming a bunch of stuff that I had filmed a while ago, including my July wrap-up. So it's coming a little bit late, better late than never. Without further ado, let's get into the books that I read in the month of July. I had mentioned in a previous video that I was in the process of reading Good Omens by Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett, and I'd also been watching the show. So I watched the show with a good friend from undergrad, and she thought that I had actually read the book before, which is why she wanted to watch the show with me. But I wanted to watch the show anyway, because I had heard good things about the book. I still wanted to read the book as well as watching the show, so I just went ahead and got Good Omens and was reading it while watching the show, which was actually a really cool experience. So for those of you who don't know anything about Good Omens, this follows an angel and a demon in the time of the apocalypse. They're having to navigate their relationships with their respective sides while dealing with the fact that they actually kind of are friends and have developed a friendship. This angel and this demon have kind of developed this friendship and developed this fondness for humans who are going to be kind of caught up in this apocalypse, and no one else seems to care that humans are going to die out in the midst of this apocalypse. So it follows the friendship of this angel and this demon, and in the process of the apocalypse happening, they misplace the Antichrist, and just shenanigans ensues, and it's just great fun. So the humor in this is super British. So if you're a fan of super British humor, you'll probably enjoy this. This is the only thing from either of these authors that I've actually read before. So I didn't quite know what to expect, but I never read anything by them. And this was just a lot of fun. It was really funny and just entertaining. I was laughing the whole time. And as I said, I'm a huge fan of British humor, so I was kind of hoping I would enjoy it, but it very much fit the need and fit what I wanted this book to be. And I also really enjoyed the show, and it was a lot of fun to read this and watch this along with the show. If you like that kind of humor, I would recommend, because I just thought it was a good time, and with some really interesting commentary on just what it means to be human and what friendship is and fighting for those friendships. I also read the May Fairy Loot book, and that was The Beholder by Anna Bright. And this one follows a woman named Salah, and she gets rejected. There's a very public marriage proposal rejection, and so in the midst of her being rejected, she is kind of shocked, but also her family is kind of very politically influential in her society, and for the sake of maintaining her family's kind of political position, she's in the position of having to find a husband, and when that marriage proposal is rejected, her stepmother kind of sends her away to go find a husband, and basically tells her, come back with a husband or don't come back at all, kind of thing. And so she's going around meeting different suitors who are mostly princes of their various lands, and is trying to find out who she can trust and who she maybe can fall in love with. And she begins to realize over the course of her travels that her stepmother might have sent her away as part of a larger plot, and she's kind of uncovering what's going on and why she was sent away and what she can do about it. It was fine. It wasn't anything particularly spectacular or original to me. It was cute. It was entertaining enough. It's kind of slow, to be honest. There were large portions of it where, some things are happening, but it's not, the plot doesn't move terribly quickly, but it's also not necessarily a character dive or a character-centered story. I mean, it does kind of focus on some characters and their internal motivations, but they don't go deep enough to kind of really make it feel like a character dive where maybe you're getting that focus as opposed to a faster moving plot. And when that's done well, that can also be a really, really great story. I love character-driven stories, but this one didn't really particularly feel like either. It didn't really feel like you're really getting to know and fall for these characters, but the plot also doesn't kind of move terribly quickly until the end of the book when she's like hooking you to kind of read. I believe this is going to be a duology, and so she wants to kind of hook you into reading the next one. And I believe this is her debut novel. It does kind of read as a debut. The writing is just kind of a little bit, and it is a YA book, so I also need to keep that in mind. It's geared towards a younger audience than myself, but there have been plenty of YA novels that I've read that I think the writing is still a little bit more mature and doesn't feel like a debut novel, even if it is that author's debut novel. This one definitely kind of read like a debut and kind of read a little bit younger than what I was expecting, but maybe that was just kind of me expecting different things than what this book was supposed to deliver. So, you know, there still were some cute moments. There were still some entertaining moments. I still might pick up the next one. I'd probably give this a 3-ish. It was kind of middle of the road. Not great, not terribly original, as I said, but still kind of fun. It had its moments. I might be intrigued enough to pick up the next one. So, we'll see. So after The Beholder, I finally finished Becoming by Michelle Obama. What a treasure. I love her so much. I started this a while ago and finally actually finished it all the way through. I'd read most of it for a book club, a feminist book club that I'm in. This was their book a couple of months ago, maybe. I can't exactly remember. And I read like half of it before that. And I finally finished this. And I love her. I love her so much. I definitely underlined and wrote all in the margins of this. And I actually also listened to this on audio because I wanted to both be able to write and underline things, but also just listen to her tell me her life story. Like she's just chilling on the couch next to me, just like imparting her wisdom. So this was so much fun. I love listening to the audiobook and I love listening to that while reading and just kind of taking notes. I definitely want to go back. I just was underlining so much that I wasn't really sure what I wanted to tab. So I'm definitely going to have to go back and look, because I don't have any, as you can tell, but I definitely want to go back at everything I underlined and kind of tab the parts that I know I'm going to want to go back to and read over and over and over again, because I'm going to want to read some of this over and over and over again. I mean, this book was just pure joy to read, even when the things that were happening weren't necessarily joyful. She's just so wise and lovely and just has a way of just imparting hope, you know, no matter what the circumstances are or no matter what's going on in her life, just having this core hope within her that she is really able to translate well and kind of give that to the reader. This was a gem. 5 out of 5. Like, So after reading Becoming, I got to the June Fairy Loop book, and that is Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. And this one was so much fun. I really enjoyed this one. Not perfect, but I really enjoyed it. So this one follows Elizabeth, and she is a young woman who has grown up in a library. So she kind of has a very unique upbringing and is pretty naive. Like her entire world is this library. And in this library, it's not just any library. It's a series of magical libraries that hold things called grimoires, which are books that basically contain, I don't know how to describe it. I don't know if they contain magic within them, and they contain different varying degrees of magic that can kind of be on everything from the benign side to very dangerous magic that is contained within these books. And so these grimoires can be very dangerous, and this is what she's been training to do, is kind of be a warden at these libraries where she manages these different grimoires. And one day when a grimoire is set loose and a murder happens, she is framed for it. She has to partner with a sorcerer named Nathaniel and his demon named Silas in order to figure out what's going on and combat this conspiracy. And she doesn't trust Nathaniel or Silas at the beginning. She is she is taught from a very young age not to trust sorcerers, and so it's very difficult for her to partner with Nathaniel to figure out what's going on, but she comes to trust him, and they figure out what's going on. And this is just such a cool world. It was just so fun to be in this world. I listened to this in part on audio and read it physically. I kind of went back and but this was just such a unique and fun world. Elizabeth is great. She's super naive, but is still just a fun main character, and she's kind of grows into her badassness. And Nathaniel is a really cool character as well. He's super snarky, which was a lot of fun. Silas was probably the coolest part about this. So the demon, Nathaniel's a demon, and there's an interesting relationship between sorcerers and demons in this world. Silas was a really awesome character as well. And so I really loved the banter in this book, and just the world building was a lot of fun. It's a very contained and small world that you actually learn about, but I thought it was still interesting enough that I didn't really care. One thing I will say is that the person that ends up kind of being the villain in this story isn't necessarily well developed, and I feel like the stakes could have been higher for kind of his ultimate goal. So I feel like the villain in this story, though, was kind of generic and not really as well developed as some of the other characters. You like kind of understand his motivations, you kind of know what he's doing, and it's kind of just this generic like, oh, he's an evil person seeking power. And I feel like there could have been a lot more to that, and the stakes of him trying to seek power and what was going on the stakes could have been a little bit higher and kind of brought that to an even higher level and brought the story overall to a new level. But still a lot of fun, and I definitely am going to want to reread this at some point. So I also continued in my quest to finish the Witchland series, or at least get caught up in the Witchland series. So I read Sight Witch, and Sight Witch is actually a novella. It's pretty short. And this one goes back a little bit in time in this world and kind of follows a backstory of the Sight Witches, of who they are and why they're important later on, and just kind of goes back to their founding into one person in particular. And this is Ryber. She's going to be a Sight Witch. That's what she believes, and she's in this colony of people who are going to be Sight Witches or are Sight Witches and have kind of taken people under their wing. And slowly but sure, and when someone who's in training is kind of ultimately called by the gods to be a Sight Witch, they kind of go away into this other area, into a cave for a while. And so slowly people kind of start going into this area and not coming back. And eventually she's the only one, and she needs to figure out what's going on and how to save the other Sight Witches. And it's really, really cool too, because this is a mixed media. I mean, there are images throughout it, and she also kind of has different journal entries. Let's see if I can find a good example. Of course, I'm not. So there are some images and just different drawings, just different pieces of documentation that are referred to, that they actually kind of create those documents and kind of show them. So I read this physically because I knew there were things just throughout it that would be difficult to translate in audio. And this was pretty cool. I actually really enjoyed this, and I enjoyed the little inserts here and there of mixed media. And this was just a fun story. It was a cool mystery. It's not designed to be, you know, anything fully fleshed out. It's a novella. I thought it was long enough for what it wanted to accomplish. It's kind of designed to give you that backstory so that the later stories where the Sight Witches come back in the rest of the series make more sense. And so it's actually really cool to read this before reading Wend Witch, because I had a little bit more context for some of the characters and what that backstory was. And I then just went straight on into Wend Witch. I listened to this on audio, as I did with Truth Witch, and I realized that it's not anything to do with the story. It's not anything to do with the writing. I think this is just a series that I can't fully absorb by audio. I think there are just enough characters and enough political actors and enough complex politics in this world that it's going to be very difficult for me to keep track of who is who, and they're jumping around to different groups of people who are doing different things at the same time, and so it's very difficult to keep track of what each group is doing, what their motivations are, and who they're related to, why they're doing what they're doing, what politics are involved there. It's very difficult to keep track of that, especially on audio. And the narrator is fantastic, actually. I really like the narrator. The writing is fantastic. The story is so cool. So I think I want to listen to Blood Witch on audio and then just go back to the very beginning and maybe re-listen to it while reading it physically, or maybe just reading it physically and taking very careful notes along the way of who everyone is, you know, what their role is in the world, and what they're fighting for, why they're doing the different actions they're doing, kind of what's going on in these different groups, so that I can follow it a little bit more closely. Because I think there are just little things here, like they're just little things that I'm missing throughout the story. And when you add all of those up, it takes a little bit of something away from the enjoyment of it, but it's all there. I can tell that it's all there in this story. I just need to consume it a different way. But yeah, so I'll come back to this series, and I'm just going to listen through everything and then go back and fully dive in, because I think I'm going to get a lot more out of it on a reread, and I think it'll be really cool. And the last thing that I read in the month of July was Venti. And this is by Nanondi Okorafor, and I just sat down in a coffee shop and just brought this along and just drank my coffee and bread until I finished this. And this is super short. I think it's 90 pages. And there are a couple of other ones that are a little bit longer, but still they're very short novellas, and it's a series of 3 of them. And this one follows the main character, Venti, and she comes from a group of people who have never left their home area, and she has actually been accepted into a university off-world and been offered a scholarship to study math, and nobody in her home knows that she's kind of tried to be accepted at this university, or that she has been accepted, and she kind of just leaves in the middle of the night to go to the transport to go to this university, and doesn't really tell anyone. So this one follows her journey to the university, and something happens. Another species kind of comes into play on their way to the university, and she needs to be the person to kind of interact with that other species and kind of mediate what's going on. Not going to say much more than that, because even though it's super short, I don't want to spoil the things that aren't obvious at the very, very beginning of it, or kind of on the back. This was really cool though. I honestly was interested from the very beginning. I think she's an incredibly interesting character and very much loves the traditions of her people and wants to kind of bring those to the university, where, you know, no one has ever seen anyone from her people because they don't leave home. And so she's trying to balance learning about new people and learning about new cultures with kind of keeping her own identity, and it'll be really interesting. So this doesn't ultimately follow her at school. I think maybe the next one will. So this follows a very short time period, and so it's kind of hard to fully get a grasp of this world in 90 pages. But what I read was super intriguing. I'm really excited to read the next one and actually have it on my list of potential things for the newts, and so I'll probably be reading the second one very soon, and hopefully the third one not too long after that. So I really would recommend. I thought I would really like this series just from what had been described to me, and I found them all on Book Outlet for very cheap, so I just went ahead and got the whole series. And I'm really glad I did, because I want to dive into the next one real soon. So that's what I read in the month of July. Let me know, have you read any of these? What did you read in the month of July? But yeah, let me know how the newts are going for you. How did your reading month in July go? Let me know your thoughts on any of these books. Be sure to subscribe below. I'll also put my Twitter and Instagram below. That's where I like to hang out, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.